one more.
Wait for her, because I want to say one thing before she. There are so many things that we can say about the director of this film. She's done so much, and I'm just going to bring her out, Ava DuVernay.
I'm going to melt into the ground, please. Thank you, thank you. That's it. Please, Chair, say something.
Roger taught me you never step on someone's applause. We give a golden thumb to our guest, and this really today means so much because you first met Roger when you were 8 years old, and you were standing outside the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion with your aunt, who you made a movie about later, and you saw him and you called, the thumbs up man, come over. Roger went over to you, and you have a picture of you and Roger when you were 8 years old. This is an actual cast of Roger's hand and thumb. So, the thumbs up man to you. Thank you. So we're going to call out Rita Colburn-Wack and do a Q&A, and we can take your thumb backstage for you.
I'll take it back.
Okay, thank you.
Just go over there and have a
Perfect.
seat.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. You all look pretty fantastic in those seats. It's a lot of people here. You're a special audience. It's a Saturday at 10:30, and you chose to see a documentary about mass criminalization. This is a special crowd. The mass criminalization at 10:30 on a Saturday crowd. Fantastic.
And thank you for coming, because I know that you had a lot on your plate, and that you're just in and you're right back out. So I just want to apologize in advance, because she's not going to be able to do autographs and everything. She has to get right to the airport.
I have a
They're waiting for
2:15
her.
flight, I think. So, yeah. But, came in on the red eye, had to be here. The 20th year of this beautiful gathering. It's so beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Yeah.
So we're going to have Rita start off.
Well, first, it was an honor to see this for the third time, and a lot of people here saw it multiple times, and to have you with us. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
When we look at this work, there's this romantic story out there that you were a publicist that turned to a director. But before that, you were a history major, and we can see that in this work. So let's talk about how you really came to this, because we saw how Angela Davis had something happen in her life that brought her to this. What brought you to the need to do history in this way for us?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely my education of being a student of history, particularly African American history, played a big part in it. I'm naturally interested in that. I really love those details. But also growing up in Compton was the big catalyst for even beginning to think in a way where I had to reckon with and deal with police aggression, a very heavy police presence in my community. And as a young person, having to reconcile what that was and choosing to do that through studying and through trying to learn why it was this way, seeing a real discrepancy between the community that I lived in and the school that I went to. I went to a predominantly Caucasian, all-girls Catholic high school on a completely different city. And so I really felt that sense of duality between how some people were living and how people in my community were living. And so that was the kind of, I would say, my environment sparked the interest in history. And then this opportunity with Netflix after Selma, the phone wasn't ringing a lot, but I got 2 calls, and one of those calls was from Netflix. A lot of filmmakers put up their nose at Netflix, but not me. They gave a black woman filmmaker an opportunity to make anything I wanted. That was the call. What would you like to make? And that ain't a call we're getting very often. And so, yeah, this is what I chose to make.
I want to go to something that you just said, because to me it still is a little shocking. We have Julie Dashes here
The Queen.
with Daughters of the Dust. I called you, I dubbed you the 3 Queens of Cinema.
Yes.
And you know,
Queen Mother.
and 26 years ago now, she made Daughters of the Dust and said that the phone wasn't ringing after that for movies. And you had, by the time you did Selma, you had I Will Follow, Middle of Nowhere, and then Selma, which was nominated for an Academy Award, but the phones weren't ringing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's just the reality of the industry that we've chosen to work in. You know, I work in an industry built on the vocabulary and the sensibility. I mean, it's built on A Birth of a Nation, like that. That is the film that, you know, really sparked the industrialized view, the idea of box office, the idea of a big opener, the idea of national distribution. When you study all that Birth of a Nation did, besides being insanely racist, and very beautiful in some ways in terms of the filmmaking, if you just look at it for craft, which is hard to reconcile for someone like me. Be like, look at that camera move. Oh my gosh, this is racist. What's happening? Don't. It's tough. But you, and so where we work is that place. You can't get away from the fact that it was built on the tenets of a film like that, and that everything that we experience now is really coming from what your foundation is. So that was the foundation. But yeah, I won Best Director at Sundance. The phone didn't ring. Selma's nominated for Academy Award, wins one. For Best Song, phone doesn't ring. Certainly, you know, the level of interest in what I do is not equal to that of my white male counterparts. And so that's just something that I have to know, and but not dwell in, and find work and make work and create work and opportunities for myself and for other people. That's my big thing, is once you get through the door and you get yourself in there, I don't want that to be the experience for other people, that they're not getting the calls. They might not be getting the calls from big wigs, but they can get the call from this little wig. And so I try to call and bring people in and make it so that we don't feel this way. And I think a big part of it is not looking for that outside validation, someone to call me. I just changed my mindset about that. It's like, you don't need to call me. I'm fabulous. I'm doing my own thing over here. And so the idea of, I think it's the idea of not kind of knocking on closed doors, but creating your own house and your own door.
So I'm going to jump, Rita is going to go back to 13th, but I want to jump to this, what you just said, because whenever I see you, whenever I read about you, whenever I hear people talking about you, the whole energy that comes from you is the fact that you don't sit back and wait for somebody to call or for the phone to ring. You have created your own opportunities, and you've worked with Oprah. Oprah saw what you were doing and called and helped create opportunities too. But then you did this thing that was so radical that no one had ever done it. Will you talk about what you did, the initiative with making more women directors and women of color directors?
Yeah, I had the opportunity that Oprah gave me to have a television show on air. She basically said, we're going to leave you alone, you do what you want, which is fantastic. And part of what I wanted to do was make sure that we really corrected an error of a lack of women directing episodic television. It's disgusting. It's really, really, you see, I'll call them these boys. They're 18, it's close enough, it's boys. Coming right out of, high school, college or high school in a couple of instances with a few short films under their belt, getting opportunity to direct episodic television, and women who have made incredible films. Like Julie Dash, Julie Dash, Daughters of the Dust. If you have not seen it, you're in for a singular American cinematic experience this afternoon.
Yeah.
This is the film that is, I had never seen anything like it, nor will anything ever be made like it. She did something that had never been done before and cannot be duplicated. It's that exquisite. And no one's calling her. Her phone's not ringing, and she had made attempts to get into episodic television, and no one's calling. So we had the honor of inviting her to. I was very nervous when I made the call. Her hand was shaking. I asked her if she would come. Asked her for 2 seasons. Asked her season 1. She was busy. That's okay. Asked her again, season 2, and she was able to make some time to come direct 2 episodes of Queen Sugar, and so she's a part of an all-women directorial team, all women for now 3 seasons. We're in our 3rd season. And I got asked in an article last year, all women again? Hasn't your point been made? And I was like, you know what? Someone said no. I'd be like, you know what? We're just gonna, if Game of Thrones can have an all-male directorial team for 6 seasons, we'll just go up to 6 and then we'll change it up. But so many of the shows that we watch, so much of what we consume as folks who love film and television, love storytelling, it's really haunting when you realize that so much of what you see is coming from a very specific gaze, a white male gaze. Now, I love white men. We love them. They're beautiful. But she really loves them. But all we're saying is everyone should have a seat at the table. And so with Queen Sugar, we make sure that we kind of over-index in one group of people who've never had the seat. Yeah.
And I also have to go to this statistic that you are the first African-American woman in history to direct a $100 million movie.
A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I think that's...
And I saw A Wrinkle in Time and loved it, and I called it a love letter to little girls all over this world.
Thank you. It was so fun to make. But when I hear that stat, it really is bittersweet. Certainly my mom is happy, and it's personally, an achievement for my family. But I think it's a real indictment of an industry that hasn't, given the reins of a project of that size to a woman, a black woman before, a woman of color in the narrative space, period. Not the narrative space, the live action space. There'd be a great woman, an Asian American woman who did an animated film at that price range, but not a live action film. So it's changing now. It's fantastic. There are maybe a handful of women that now have those projects, but it's really something to be said about the kinds of pressure to perform when you have a project that has that much scrutiny because you're the first. The pressure to kind of live up to history. These are the kinds of things that my white male counterparts don't have to deal with. They just make their movies. They just get to make their movies and keep going. And so it's challenging to have to try to navigate creating work and being creative and just wanting to be an artist. And yet everywhere I go, they're like, you made history, and you made history there, and you made history there. I'm like, really? Because I was just working. And why am I making history? It's 2018. Shouldn't we feel kind of weird that I'm making it? Like, you know what I mean? It shouldn't be a badge of honor to us. It should be an indictment about what we have not done for 100 years since cinema's been in existence. Like, how is it this way? And so I think that's really a lot of what I like to talk about, to share, is just changing our perception about what we hear, changing our perception about what we're seeing and how we're seeing it, how we're consuming it. We really have to interrogate those things if we want to make things move forward, and that's what we discuss in the 13th. All the things that we think we know, but when you really get underneath it and you peel it back layer by layer, it's like, golly, didn't know that was the origin, didn't know that was the intention, didn't know that that was the outcome, the effects that I don't hear about in newspapers and what newspapers? Online. And really getting underneath all of these ideas that we feel strongly about.
One of the things that was amazing to me was that you did all of your interviews. And I look at that and I know that it's upwards of 20. And how much, what was that process like? Because you got a lot of people to say a lot of things, particularly Newt Gingrich. How did that come about? What happened?
Yeah. I conducted 44 interviews for it. And all of them, some people are in, some people aren't, but it's, I did 2 hours with each person. I would walk in and let them know this is going to be a 2-hour interview, because it's hard to hold up your guard for 2 hours. Like, you got to be really good not to say the truth for 2 hours. And so, some people held on longer than others. It's like a relationship. When you first meet them, or her, they're trying to be they're showing you their best self. But year 2, year 3, it starts to get into, and for some of you, year 20, 30, what have you, you start to see and get to know different layers of a person. And so I structured it as a 2-hour interview at minimum. Some of them went longer. And it always kind of fascinates me when people are surprised that I did them all. I didn't know you couldn't do them all. Now I'm clear that some people don't do that. But yeah, no, why would you not want to sit with people and talk about this topic? And so, even the folks I didn't agree with, the 40% of the people in the documentary are conservatives on this issue, which is not my position. I was genuinely interested in understanding what they knew, what they thought, why they thought it, and trying to get some understanding. So the interviews were based really out of a deep curiosity for everyone that I was speaking with.
Was there something that you started, when you started this, was it going to be on the 13th Amendment, or were you trying to uncover something about prison and prison reform? How did you start it?
It began, I thought that I was going to be focusing on the prison industrial complex, prison as industry, prison as business. So I thought that would be the whole thing. Right now it's one section in it, but it could be and should be and is a whole documentary. Just looking at the ways that people are profiting off of punishment, profiting off of the warehousing of human life. In this country, we do it in a way that's particularly barbaric. And so that was the idea for the whole thing, but as I got into it, it was really clear that you can't talk about this present moment without having context for where it came from and really not knowing the legacy of it. And that became clear because I was speaking with, I had that in my head and thought, oh, everyone will see it and know it. And I was startled by how many people did not see the direct correlations between slavery and the current epidemic of mass incarceration. And so it became that idea of, oh gosh, I've got to make this link for people. And I was speaking with someone, and I was just talking very matter-of-factly. I was like, yeah, the 13th Amendment. And I kept going. They were like, what about the 13th Amendment? And I said, the clause. What's the clause? It's like, the clause, and I'm telling about the clause, blank face. And then I started asking people. It's like, people didn't know it. I guess it was that one African studies class I went to at UCLA where they taught it. I thought everyone knew. And so that became the hook, to just say, wow, in your own Constitution, there's something that's a little loophole there that opened up a wider exploration of everything that's in the piece.
When you look at all the interviews and how you were able to pull them together, there were we kept peeling back another layer of the onion and finding out something new. It's like a primer. And what I wanted to know was this whole idea about Alec. I don't think that was something that was widely known. Did you know about that before you started? Did you discover it?
Yeah, that was the only piece of the puzzle I've talked about that I didn't know. And so that was something that as I was putting together and constructing everything else, I stumbled across this. I'd heard of it, but I didn't know its function was exactly that. And so, you know, I'm doing my research, I'm doing my interviews, and I stumble across this shadowy group of operatives in the back room, basically writing the laws that we abide by, unbeknownst to us in the ways in which that's happening. And so, no, pretty distressing, and really had to study it and buckle down on it and try to understand what it was for myself so that I could share it, at least in its basic form in the doc. But there's so many things in the documentary I learned from so many people in the piece, all of those folks who gave their time and their brain power and their years of experience and their opinions. You know, I learned so much from in every single interview. But Alec was the thing that I knew nothing about when I went in.
I loved seeing Angela Davis and us getting a vision of what she really did. And I don't think that we all knew that. We also didn't know that the whole system continues to morph. And as you show us what's going on, we don't know what the next iteration is. Do you feel, what is it that you think we can do? We've all seen this. We've seen the quotes. We can't deny some of the things that have happened. What are you hoping individual people can do?
Yeah, I think one of my subjects is in the audience, and one of the the people who spoke. James Kilgore, are you here? Is he here? He's not here. So there's a man who lives in this community nearby, right? Pretty close. Is he here? In Champaign. James Kilgore, who was in the documentary, really sharing with us so much information about how these systems are durable, how they're insidious, how they don't actually change. They just shift and morph a little bit. And he's right here in this community doing the work. But he's doing work that is of interest to him. The reason why what's so beautiful about the action that I've seen come out of the doc is that when people watch it, you can ask 10 people what they got out of it, and 10 people will tell you something different that they're passionate about. Some people watch it and are very passionate about the upcoming kind of industry around surveillance. Some people look at it and are interested in, the issues of what are going on inside the prison. Some people are interested in what's going on with people who are formerly incarcerated. Some people are interested in the immigrant experience. Some people are interested in policy. The reason why I didn't put a hotline at the end, or a petition to sign, or a website, the reason why I didn't have all of those really smart people tell you what to do to fix it is because it's not their problem, it's our problem. And so I can't tell you what to do. It is a matrix that has built a monster that each person needs to figure out what part you play in it and what you will do to extract us from it. And whether that's donating, protesting, writing, organizing, visiting people who are incarcerated, or even thinking differently about that headline that you'll see that calls someone a criminal. Thinking differently about what that is. Right now I'm prepping to direct a film this summer about one of the cases that you saw here, the Central Park Five. It'll be a five-part piece that delves into that case. And so my way is telling stories, but everyone needs to find, if we are people who truly say that we believe in justice and dignity for all, it's not enough to watch the documentary and say, oh my gosh, that's terrible, and go on. You don't have to lead the march. You don't have to be Dr. King to change what you do in your day. When someone someone's talking, to say, no, that's not quite right. When you hear bias, just have a different understanding of things, but even perhaps to take it further, to look into some of the organizations that James and others have founded and are dealing with, to continue to read, to continue to study, so we can get really muscular around these issues. So if there's anything that I'm proudest of that I've made, and I've been making a lot of things, this one, Netflix dropped in 190 countries on the same day. And so many different kinds of people around the world come up to me in all kinds of languages. I recognize 13th. And they come into it from the place that they are, from the place of understanding, from their own history. And I think it's a difficult piece to watch and not be changed in some way. However that happens for you. There's got to be one piece of information in it that you've not heard before. If there's one thing that you learn from it out of all that 100 minutes, then that's good enough for me. So I'm proud of it.
One of the things I wanted to ask about, to me, one of the most searing, heartbreaking indictments is the Lateef Browder case. And my question, though, is about rehabilitation. And do you see any movement with actually rehabilitating inmates, prisoners, after this? Because that's what I've heard. Internationally, that's what I see and hear about more.
There are wonderful individual groups and nonprofits that are doing incredible work around the country on this issue, but there's not been anything that's it's not been a mandate of the state, of our government, certainly not of the current administration, to create real protocol around how we can humanely treat people who have served their time and now are re-entering society. There are 40, Senator Cory Booker talks in the film about 40 different collateral consequences of things you can't do if you serve your time and you're coming back. We know about voting. Startling statistic that in Selma, where I feel so passionately about and made the film there, 30% of black men in that community have permanently lost the right to vote. So just imagine 2.3, I could have used 2.3 million people in the last election. I don't know what I'm talking about. I could have, 2.3 million people. That's currently, that's not talking about legacy, the people who were incarcerated 10 years ago and 20 years ago and 30 years ago. None of those people can vote. None of them can vote, ever. So that idea of the permanent loss of the right to vote, let alone the stigma of having to check the box to get a job, but it goes into student loans. We say, oh, you should go to school, get a life for yourself. Well, how are you going to afford it? Can't get the job, can't get the student loan, right?
I knew about a lot of that. I did not know
Federal
about the student loans.
Federal student loans, you have to check a box. Food stamps, public assistance, have to check a box. Even, like I said, private rentals. If you just want to, if you own property, you, as the state says, has a right to know whether or not that person was convicted of a crime. And are you going to choose the applicant that has been convicted or hasn't been convicted? So that's that scarlet letter that they talk about that continues to follow folks. And so, that's another thing that people ask me, what can you do? Thinking differently about people who have prior convictions and not allowing that stigma to stop you from renting to them or employing them, to really understand all of the ways that people actually get into prison. 97% of the people in prison have never had a trial. That's not fair. 97%, it's in the piece. 97, just say it, 97% of the people who are currently incarcerated, who you won't give a job to, who you won't employ, who can't get the student loan, who can't rent a place, never had a fair trial, never experienced due process. They were given a plea bargain and they took it. You have very rare cases like Kalief Browder, who said, I'm not going to cop to something I didn't do, and still he ends up like he did. So the system is very skewed. Brian Stevenson says it best here. It really favors and privileges folks who are rich, who have the means, to get themselves out, still doing crimes, but can bail themselves out, can defend themselves, can submit evidence, can participate in the judicial process. Poor people usually take the plea. Public defender, they take the plea, they serve their time, and then they come out, and now they're forever stigmatized. So it's a lot more complicated than just calling people criminals and throwing them away. And that's one of the big things we hope folks take away from us.
I think I know the answer to this, but usually when there's a really important movie like this out, it gets invited to the White House by the president. Have you been invited to show this movie at the White House?
Chaz.
That's funny. No, I am not. I'm not. The question is, if I was invited, would I go? That's the question. But no. No. It's interesting watching it now. I caught a little bit at the back. I hadn't watched it since it came out. And it came out the fall of the election came out. I wanted to drop it like 2 months before the election, so I hadn't watched it since then. And I got really emotional about just thinking about where we were at that time when I first made it. There was a real sense of progress around the issue, people talking about it, bipartisan conversations, and this piece kind of contributing to a lot of different material, Michelle Alexander's work, Brian Stevenson's work, about kind of getting us to another place. That's all not just stopped, but backslid a good 10 years in the last year. In terms of progress made, both in terms of legislation and just in terms of the general appetite of legislators and politicians to even engage with the issue. You know, remember there was time you were hearing about it. Now, I mean, all we hear about is tweets.
That won't last too long. I have a theory that he's going to be resigning real soon.
Okay, Chaz. We'll see. We'll see. But that assumes that everyone here even agrees with that, you know. And I feel like, you know, whether or not you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump, it's really just looking at a place where what's our public discourse right now about issues like this that at one point both sides were engaging with for whatever their reasons were, and there was a lot of complicated reasons why folks were engaging with it. Some on the up and up, some a little shady and shaky, but it was in the conversation. Now, I was surprised when Chaz said, "I want you to come to Eberfest." I was like, "Oh, great. What are we gonna do?" 13. She said 13th. I was like, "The old one?" And she's like, "Yeah, you know, we gotta, you know, make sure people are talking about this issue." So I appreciate the platform.
And this Eberfest crowd is great.
Yeah.
You know, something that I found online, I don't know if it was by design, but I found the transcript online. And I thought that was helpful as well, because there are so many parts to this film, as you said.
Transcript of this movie?
Yes.
Oh, wow,
and
I didn't know.
Probably shouldn't be there, but it's there.
I wasn't aware of that, but okay.
What happens is that people are picking this apart for schools, and that having something like this as a course adoption or getting it out there so that you at least begin to talk about different parts. Now, as you did all of the interviews and you pulled in some things that, from a director's point of view, it was almost as if graphics were a character, because the graphics really talked and spoke to us. Music, once again, pulling that together. I noticed that you use a particular editor. Over and over again. What was the collaboration like in your team in pulling this together?
Yeah, I have the same editor since my very first film. Spencer Averick, great friend of mine and a beautiful editor. We grew up together. We started making these films together. I remember I Will Follow, which is the way that I came to Roger's attention as a filmmaker. So part of my story with Roger is that I was a kid whose aunt took her to see the rehearsals for the Oscars, the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. And on Saturdays and Sunday, on the Saturday and Sunday before the Oscars on Sunday night, the stars would come in, the presenters would come in, and they'd read their teleprompter, and somehow she found out about this. So you'd have, like, I don't know, maybe 50 hardcore geeks like her and me. We would stand outside, and not many of them black, but a few. And so I saw them all share I saw just all the 80s stars. And, but my favorite, because I would watch the show all the time, was Siskel and Ebert. And so I saw him, and he came over, and it's on my Twitter now if anyone's supposed to see the picture of me and Roger when I was like 8. And, but then I knew him as a publicist. I would pitch him projects because I was a publicist before I was a filmmaker. Didn't pick up a camera until I was 32 years old. Didn't go to film school. And so I was making a living as a publicist, and I was advocating for small films by women, people of color. So I would call him, or I would send him an email, and he would always review my little film that no one else would review. And, you know, I'd be like, he's like, is it coming to Chicago? I was like, well, no, it's not coming to Chicago. It's only in LA and New York, but could you do it for the national platform? I was always trying, but he would always do these obscure films because he loved movies, as we know. And so when I had to pitch him my movie, I said, how am I going to do this? Am I going to send him an email and ask him to do my movie? And so I just sent him this passionate email, and I remember I spent my last money to set up the screening in his favorite screening room on that one seat that he would sit in, the whole thing. And you went with him and your daughter, right? There were I think there were 2 black women with him, and I was like, this is good, there's black women. This is a good sign, it's a good sign, it's a good sign. But I knew it was going to be good because he had such empathy for voices that were not his own. And so he gave that film, a film I made for $50,000. I mean, $50,000, that film.
Of your own money?
Of my money that I've been saving for a house. $50,000 to make this film, and he gave it not one glorious review, not 2, but 3 different reviews. He tweeted about it. He reminded people when it went to DVD. He pulled it up. He told people. I counted 27 different tweets on the national show, on the radio, everything. He really, a little $50,000 movie by someone who had no power and no way to even ever thank him. So that's why, I get emotional. That's why anywhere I go, I always thank him. Because he was really the first person. Nobody was really reviewing that film. It was like a woman named Carrie Rickey out of Philadelphia who had reviewed
Ricky's
it.
here.
Is she here?
Yes.
Carrie Rickey! Ah! I love you. Okay, we'll do it. They were the only 2 people who were reviewing the film, and if they hadn't reviewed that film, I don't believe I would have got on the other people reviewed it, and it started to do well. And I don't think I would have got on the radar of Sundance, but my next film, not only, I'd been rejected from Sundance 9 times. The labs, every lab, every short, everything, I'd always been rejected. But I really see a direct correlation between kind of being brought out of the crowd by Roger in that way that he had that national platform to being directly on the radar of Sundance. Not only did I get in, I got into dramatic competition. Not only did I compete in dramatic competition, we won Best Director. And from there, it's Selma, it's Frankel, it's 13th, it's everything that happens. I directly connected to these two journalists. It took some time to really see something that no one else had. But anyway, I say all that because Spencer Averitt cut all of that. We started together very early, and to see him mature as an editor into this piece where we were wrangling hundreds of hours, actually 1,200 hours of racist, violent footage, and trying to go through all that to figure out what were the things to show you, how to put them together, what's too much. You know, there's the footage there we call Dignified Man, the man who they kept pushing, and he picked up his hat and he put it on, he picked up that piece of tape goes on for 7 minutes, and he's beaten into the ground, he's beaten bloody, and later died from, his family believes, many years later, but injuries that were sustained during that time that he had to deal with through several years afterward. So it's like knowing how much to show and when to show it again. We show it twice so that there's emotional response the second time. And so the idea of, well, do you show them beaten bloody or do you show the dignity? You know, and how to cut that. And so the process is very intimate, and it's been one that's I've luckily been blessed to have the same editor from the little movie that Roger and Carrie saw to, to this, to Wrinkle in Time, to Central Park 5, everything that I'm doing. It's a special relationship. Thanks for asking. No one asked
Yeah.
about the editor.
No,
Appreciate it.
it looked like that. The way that it was put together, it was like, how was she able to take us through all of the time periods and all of that? And I knew that that must have been part of the process. I also love, love, love how you end. Talk about the decision to end with just people.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a different ending. All of those people who were interviewed, it was a really powerful sequence, if I must say so myself. They looked into the camera and they said, I am Brian Stevenson, founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, Montgomery, Alabama. We do this, right? And so it was like all these warriors saying what they did into the camera with a different frame. It was just very powerful because you saw their lower third, you saw who they were, but to actually have them say not only their title, but actually what part of this problem they are weaponized against, what they're battling, was really powerful. But it did something really unexpected. It took you off the hook because you saw them and you were like, they've got it. These people are badass. They're gonna take care of it. What a great doc. Okay, good, some good people on the case. And I didn't believe that you'd ever get to the question that you asked, which is, what do I do? Mm-hmm. And so without having those solutions there, it made people leave the movie, or when you're finished with the movie, really thinking about, God, what part do I play? I don't know what to do. And my answer is, I'm not going to give you a website. I'm not going to give you 1-800 number. It's a question that each person has to answer for themselves in their own life, depending on who you are, what your experience is, and your appetite to actually do something. And that'll be different for everyone, and so for some people it'll be nothing. And sometimes just the knowledge in the back of your head is enough. It may materialize or come up in a different way years from now, but at least you know. And so instead, when Common, our good friend Common, gave me that song, A Letter to the Free, which was a second song that he had given me for a movie. The first song was Glory. And I said to him, he said, hey, I got a song. And I was like, we did it. We did it pretty big. You won the Emmy, the Oscar, the Grammy, you won it all. He didn't win the Emmy, he won the Emmy for this. But you won everything. I don't think we should do a second song. It's a little repetitive. He's like, yeah, but what about Scorsese and De Niro? I was like, we are not Scorsese and De Niro. It's not applicable, Common. I don't think, please don't give me another song. I don't want another song. He's like, just listen to the song. Just listen to this song. So literally, I would not listen to the song. I did not want to do it again. I needed fresh, something fresh. We're at the White House. Not this White House, the other White House. At the White House. Jess was like, what? At the White House. And it's one of the Obama's last gatherings, and I'm just so honored to be there. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank God for Selma. It got me in rooms like this. This is fantastic. And so I'm there, and it's one of the goodbye celebrations, and Prince was performing that night, and it was like, it's Prince, and it's the Obamas. I'm like, there's not a night better than this ever. I don't even want to do anything else right now. And who walks up to me, Common? I'm like, hey, buddy, how you doing? He's like, I need you to hear something. I was like, you know what? I'll listen to it next week. He's like, no, right now. He pulls me in the corner. He raps it in my ear. He actually raps it. He's like, you're not going to listen to this on tape? I'm going to do it right now. So I'm in the White House, hearing that song, watching Obama, watching Prince, and I was like, okay, you can be this can be in the movie. So I took the song and I started to listen to it myself to say, what does it evoke in me? And all I could think about was joy. The joy of hearing it in that moment, in that space, with people who I respected, and I thought about just the survival of black people through all that oppression. I'll show you 100 minutes of oppression, but let's just tap into the joy, the good times. That's what that song meant to me because of the moment that I heard it. So we went into the first picture is my great-grandmother. I asked all my family, I asked all my friends. Common's father's old picture playing basketball is in it. People running through sprinklers on the beach. We dipped into a couple of archives, and the point is just to say, there's hope, and there's always been hope. And even through chaos, even through oppression, even through violence, there's been a building of family, a building of community, not just with black folks, but with all kinds of communities. The human spirit endures. And that's what we want to leave with. How do we change things so that we can experience more joy, more togetherness? And it's a question that we all have to answer for ourselves.
You are so awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Since you have to leave, we have to open up for just a few questions. Otherwise, this audience would kill me. You came all the way. We have some microphones.
I have no idea what time it is, but I have a 2:15 flight. How much? 1:16. How far away is the airport?
We're taking 2 questions. Where's the microphone? Microphone.
We have a question right here to your left.
Okay.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Tashomi Campbell, and I'm an exoneree. I was locked up for 18 years on a 55-year sentence case. I gave my time back. I'm a advocate for the Innocence Project. I have a video on YouTube. If anybody goes on YouTube and punches up Illinois Innocence Project, you'll see my video and it'll tell my story. But lately, I was a keynote speaker on Black History Month in Springfield College, because I'm a public speaker too, at Springfield College. And that was the first time I actually saw your movie. And it was touching, you know, it really enlightened me. And I've watched it like 10 times since then. But what I was wondering was, do you know anybody who could possibly help me make a documentary to tell my story? Because there are people in town, and there are people in Illinois that go through the same type of situation. I just want to bring enlightenment to it, and also, you know, enlighten the kids on what could happen and how it could happen. I know y'all don't know my story yet, but yeah, I got locked up when I was 21, and I got out when I was 39. I'll be 42 this year.
Well, you have a powerful story. Innocence Project is an amazing organization. If any folks, it's a quick Google, but they do some incredible work. I can't help you make the documentary, but I bet you there's somebody in this space who can. I think so much of it is about looking in your own community, about filmmakers who are here in the Illinois area, in Chicago, in the Champaign-Urbana area, is that what we call it, who are, don't know where I am, y'all, passionate about the same things that you're passionate about. I think so often when we're thinking of just in the independent film world, it's about what's right around you, who can you get your hands on, and who has the most proximity to you, who's closest to you. So I would really encourage you to do that, and you've just made a great statement and declaration to everyone here. This brother here wants to tell a story. He's sitting right there if anyone wants to chat with him about it. All right? Thank you.
You know what? And and I know we have to get you to the airport. Let's give her a hand. I'm sorry I said to.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Have a great Everfest.